Right. Hello and welcome to the Appreciative Inquiry and Visuals mini session. My name is Heather Leavitt Martinez, and I'm a certified Appreciative Inquiry facilitator and virtual practitioner. I am honored to live and work on the ancestral lands of the Ute, Pueblo, and Anasazi elders, past, present, and future. Now, we have a packed agenda today, so let's get started. My plan is to keep this within 30 minutes. If I go over and if you need to leave, I completely understand. This session is being recorded for your convenience. I will also stay on for about 10 minutes to answer any of your questions, starting with your burning questions today, and then getting to the pre-submitted questions from the Google form many of you already filled out. All right. So before we get to that purpose today, I would love to learn where you're dialing in from and who's in the room. I usually do this visually, but because we are in a bit of a time crunch and for the number of those who are in the room, I'm going to ask you to put in the chat where you're dialing in from. And if you're tired of answering this question, I like to say, what were you doing right before you came into this session? Were you having a cup of coffee, connecting with a friend? Maybe you just rolled out of bed or put out a fire. And what you see on the screen here, normally we annotate this so it's more of an interactive thing. And in the November session, I'll be giving this and many other visual tools that you can use in your online sessions. And I also want to know who's in the room. So if you don't mind putting in the chat, let me know. Are you a visual practitioner? Are you a facilitator? Are you a trainer? Or are you something else? And if you're something else, I would love to know what that is. Great. So we've got facilitators, trainers, great. Facilitators, all of the above. That's great. Yep. I checked out the survey, and we do have a wide variety of folks in the room in terms of their skill sets and also their interest, the types of clients that they work with, and how you want to apply visuals to your facilitation practice. So I love that you all are wearing multiple hats. And today is really a very practical overview of how to actually use the AI process template. And then in the November session, we're really going to dive in to dreaming, designing, and delivering to meet the client's needs. So let's just get right into the purpose. The purpose of this mini session is to learn how to use the Appreciative Inquiry Process template to facilitate a discovery meeting conversation. You received access to the template in your welcome email, and it's also we're also going to put it in the chat. And if you don't have it printed out, no worries. Simply grab a piece of paper and you can draw along. It's super, super simple. In fact, you don't even have to draw today. No one's looking at your work. You can just take some notes. But if you don't have that handout, then, and thank you, Tina, for putting it in the chat and putting the link in there. It's something that you can use going forward. So, what is a discovery meeting? This is an initial meeting where you meet a potential client to discuss their project and how you can support and together find ways to collaborate. My approach is one of service so that I can model the way and demonstrate by facilitating the conversation so that they can experience what it's like to work with me as an AI facilitator. If you're not an experienced facilitator, that's okay. I created the AI process template when I wasn't a facilitator. I was a graphic recorder. At this time, I was looking for ways that I could bring value with visuals and make meaning, more meaning in meetings. And this template later became a facilitation tool that I now use every time I meet with new clients and projects that I also start. So having this template has really saved me in a lot of situations. Now, the process today will be to learn about the 5 phases of the 5D Appreciative Inquiry Framework. This visual template serves as a framework as you harvest the information you need to write a statement of work or a proposal and shows your value by providing a partial solution in your very first meeting. So again, this is going to be super high level. I'm going to show you how I do it, and then you can figure out a way and certainly ask questions at the end or email me after the session to say, how do I customize it? And we'll dive, again, we're going to dive deeper in that in November. And then the payoff today is that you can leverage this tool in your next discovery meeting or even practice it in other meetings to help you be more productive in your work. So today, rather than telling you about the benefits of combining appreciative inquiry and visuals, you probably saw that in the video that I shared with you. I want you to experience it. You can watch the video I created for this course. That's a great way to review should you want to sign up for the course, the full course in November. So let me share um, my desktop, and this is my actual desktop where we're all going to be drawing and writing together. So you can also learn more about appreciative inquiry by um, attending other upcoming courses, and a great self-study task would be to get familiar with the AI principles that I shared in that welcome email. Now, I want you to grab your favorite mark making tools and any colors that you feel comfortable working with. And again, if you don't have this handout, no worries. You can certainly draw along with me. All right. So the first thing we want to do, and in this template, we have discover, dream, design, and deliver. When I first learned appreciative inquiry, it was the 4D process. And so the very first step is define before we even get to discover. But I like to kind of put those two together before my meeting. So when I get ready to meet with a client, I do a little bit of prep work. I start by writing in the center of the piece, maybe the client's name, their mission, if I have it, or their vision. I might go to their website and see what they're all about, what the purpose of our meeting is or the event that I'm helping them with. I also add the date and any names, usually up in here, any names of the people that I know that I'm going to be meeting with. I review any emails or notes from communications that we've had and any, maybe even some questions up in this upper left hand corner. This is where most of that define is going to be happening. Okay. And when we meet, I begin by confirming why they want to meet, and sometimes I'll ask what their high bars and low bars are. So this is where we get into helping, where we want to get into facilitating visuals and how those visuals come into the really great question making. So let me show you what I mean. So we all have a desired outcome in mind. But what I like to ask is, what's your high bar and what's your low bar? Because we want to be successful in this first meeting. Okay, so this is a slide that I often use, and sometimes I just ask the question. And I love to make things visual, and I love for people to hear what they or see what they've heard or said, and for others to be able to see that too. So in a lot of cases, I'll go ahead and either type this in, or I'll have them annotate a shared screen like this, or if I'm in person, I'll have a big chart and I'll write these down as well. And it helps us set the intention and co-create the design. So let's give it a try, and I'll model the way. And as I do, I want you to be thinking about what your high bars and low bars are for today's session. So, what is the high bar minimum of what you would like to learn? And your high bar would be something that is a nice to have or would exceed your expectation. So, you can put that in the chat right now, and I'm going to put it in there as well. So I want to cover the high-level overview of my process and provide some ideas on how you can use visuals in the AI approach to running discovery meetings. So that's really my low bar. That's just the basic of what I want to accomplish today. So what's your low bar? Maybe you want to learn something new. Maybe you want to validate something you already know. Maybe you want to get a sense of who I am. To decide if you like my teaching style, my presentation style, and if you want to learn more about visuals and facilitation. And you're, again, welcome to share that in the chat, or you can just make a note for yourself to see if that question gets answered today. And if not, then I would put the responsibility onto you and ask you, what questions do you need to ask in order to meet your low bar expectation? Excellent. Thank you for sharing those. Great. Learning more about the template and the application. That's awesome. I use this a lot of different ways, so would love to answer any questions that also come up for you as well. Great. And I'm going to offer some resources at the very end beyond me of how you can learn more about visuals and so that you can create and choose a good fit for you as well. Awesome. And so now I want you to be thinking about your high bar. Now, this is the what would be nice to have or what would exceed your expectations for today's really short session. So, my high bar is that you leave inspired and ready to implement one or more ideas that you've gained by being here. Now, again, I would use this as an annotation tool, but we're just using for this for the chat for now. All right, so let's get back to that. Let's get back to our template so that you can really see how we can put this into use. So as we are looking at this template. And again, this template could be something that if you're sitting around a room, everyone can be looking at. If you're online, you can certainly use a document camera, whether it's your own camera used as a second camera dialing in, or a document camera, or I'm also going to provide you a little bit later this file in a PowerPoint document that you can go in and edit and type. You can also just keep this to yourself. I use this as almost like an intake form to find out what it is the desired state is for the group. So after a few minutes, so what I do is I ask them a very, very basic question. You know, it could be, tell me about your project team or organization, right? And so they just start what I call unpacking their backpack. And so they could be talking pretty generally. Some of them might be talking really specifically and down in the weeds. And I'm trying to get a sense of who they are. But we know, as for those of us that know appreciative inquiry, and by David Cooperwriter, when he says, we live in the world our questions create. So it's important that we ask questions and make inquiries that go from problem seeking to possibility seeking. And so, what do I mean by that? We can keep focusing on the problem, but then we lose sight of what's possible. So, we have to ask, what are unconditionally positive questions? And so, an unconditionally positive question is a question that evokes the life affirming force that's within us. Now, that's a pretty big mouthful here, but it's really a question that has them focus on something that they've done that was positive. This is based in positive psychology. So, one statement might be, please share a recent accomplishment, or can you tell me about something that you've done recently that your team experienced by working together on a project? And after they start talking about that, I might ask, what contributed to your collective success? So after a few minutes of them sharing, I discern if they know what they need or if they think they know what they need. This is an important distinction because some clients have a clear vision, but there might be a gap that I'm there to help them with. Or some are just rambling and they need some clear guidance. So when I ask these appreciative inquiry questions, I'm listening for the strengths of what it took for them to work together and what are the skill sets in the room. And then I take notes in this discovery part. So I'm listening for the collective skills, the individual skills, the collective strengths, the individual strengths, because we want to build on that to get to the ideal state. So then we get to the dream state. When I find a good time to transition, usually about, I'd say I'm in this world about 5 to 10 minutes, then I ask another AI question. Tell me what you hope to achieve in this upcoming session. What is your ideal or desired outcome? And here I'm listening for the positive aspects of what they want. So I might ask them, how do you want participants to feel? And simultaneously, I'm thinking of ways to help their participants leave feeling good about participating in the session that we are about to co-design. I'm asking them that desired outcome because that then turns into the purpose of the meeting. And when I go to write the SOW, the statement of work or the proposal, I have that purpose in mind. That's going to help me and lead me into the design state. Now, that's kind of a balcony view from a facilitator's perspective. So what I'd like to do next is I'd like to sort of jump on what I call the dance floor. And some of you may have heard of this before. So this is a meeting principle, and I have lots of meeting principles that are visuals that I'll be sharing in November. But one meeting principle is, and this is by Ron Heffitz, the co-author book of The Practice of Adaptive Leadership, is when you're a facilitator, there are going to be times, or a trainer at any time, and even a participant, there are going to be times where you are on the dance floor with everybody. Sometimes people call it we're in the soup, right? And so if that's the case, then we need to be observant, especially if are a facilitator or a trainer, right? We need to see what's happening in the room. But there are other times where we need to take more of a balcony view, a facilitator's perspective, where we can really see what's going on in the room and what do people need. So what do I mean by that? Um, so I want to dance in this space a bit. As you begin to think about how you would like to incorporate appreciative inquiry and visuals into your work, what would you like to be able to accomplish? Now, I'm talking about this is beyond today. Think about your practice and your practical application. It may be that it would be a nice to have a series of visual collaboration tools to use in your facilitation, or perhaps you're great at customizing visual templates like the one that I have here, but really customizing them for the client's needs. But you want to learn to form an AI question and know just when to ask it. So, love to hear from all of you. What is that? What's that dream state? What's that desired outcome that you have in terms of putting appreciative inquiry and visuals together? Love for you to put that in the chat because we're going to get to that design piece in just a minute. Now, I talked about collecting those positive feelings and attributes. That's that dream state, right? So we are creating a bit of a vision of what we want to accomplish, and we're capturing those feelings, but we're also capturing the purpose as well if we don't already know what it is, or we're deepening that purpose based on that. We're also looking at what are the measures of success, going back to those skills and strengths, whether they're individual or collective of the group. How are we going to ensure that this is going to be a successful event? And that leads us right into the design phase. And this is by far my favorite phase. So far, you've experienced both the balcony and the dance floor aspects of the define, the discover, and the dream phase. And because this is my favorite part, we'll spend most of our time in the 3-week session in this designed piece. Even when I'm going to show you, dive deeper into the discover and dream, I'm going to give you lots of visuals and templates in order to be able to execute that. And so, but due to our limited time today, let me show you some examples of visual templates that I've created for a client at the beginning of the pandemic who was challenged with having to pivot their business in order to survive. And I'll show you some other pieces that I've come up with as well. Now, these are some square sticky notes that I got from Neuland. Any of you that know I am a Neuland ambassador, so I'm happy to explain how I use all of these in my practice. But these were just a set of notes that I sketched out during a discovery meeting. They were probably penciled in, much sketchier than this, but this is what I drew out for the proposal. Took pictures of it and gave it to them and said, here's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with a chart where we say where we are. What are our goods and services? Who are our partners, who are our partners, who are our clients, and how do they reach us? And this, we can start to begin harvesting the kind of conversations of who we were. This was prior to pandemic. And then starting to share that vision, that shared vision of what we want to become. So let's create a shared vision of our future. And this takes the form of a lot of drawing. And I have lots of different templates that I can share that go below that. And then once we know our vision, what can we take with us? So really, what can we let go of? What are new ideas that we can plant seeds or that need to be launched? So what seeds are we planting and what is needed in order to foster these new ideas? Talking about that pivot. And then in terms of our teams, how are we going to work together? What's it going to take for the planet and the people? What are our new goods and services? What are the values that we're working from in order to get us there? And what are those tangibles that we're going to need in order to make that help? So these are just a few examples of what I did in one session for a client, and I'll show you um, a few more that I've used in other areas of my life where I teach. Let's see, I teach a branding class. If you want to brand your work, the kind of audience you have, and then really pulling that all together. And in a few minutes, I'll show you how I take this from this smaller size to the larger size. I also work with groups in terms of getting their technology ready for being working online. I have this really fun coaching template that I do. And as you can see, these are really simple, but you have these simple, and then you can use these to harvest the kind of conversations that you want. And then, of course, this is another one that I've taught in the past. It's for coaching, integrating your harvest based on your values and what kind of information that you're taking in. Now, these are just a few examples. In November, I'm going to share lots of other tips for you as well. And then finally, we get to delivery. Now, let me show you a little bit about that. I'm going to get to the larger templates in just a moment, but I also want to make sure that you get access to the digital file that I'll be sharing with you, where you can use this online. So this is available as an editable PowerPoint slide. I'm going to follow up with that. Actually, if you want to, Tina, you could probably throw that in the chat. But I'm going to follow up in an email and make sure that you have a copy of that, so that if you do want to use this editable one where there's all this text in between here is where you would be typing that in. And you can also share it with the group and make it a work in progress piece as well. So when it comes to delivery, you have that choice between online, in person, or hybrid. And the way you choose to deliver, oops, just a second here. Lost my cursor. The way you choose to deliver will also depend on the format. You have the print version and, of course, this PowerPoint version as well. And so I want to show you some examples of how ideas go from sticky notes that can be turned into templates and be drawn on the wall. So I've got a couple of things here. Many of you are familiar with flip charts, and this is a flip chart, Neuland flip chart, but it also has a portfolio that I've attached to the top of it. So I used to use this in when I was working in agencies, where I would have my charts in this big portfolio and show them this is what it's going to look like. And then I have a piece of a static, it's a plastic transparency that I put over if I needed to make any adjustments. It can also be erased. It's like a clear dry erase board. So I would take these to my clients, and then we could customize them. So some of the things that I showed you before, yeah, that vitals sheet, it was like, okay, here is a template. We're going to get into template design in November, but I would listen to those things that they want to accomplish, and I'd start designing them out, thumbnail sketching, and then, okay, let's co-design a template together. Sometimes I do that with the client. Sometimes I do that on my own. And this is, again, I'll share some of these tools with you, how to use them if you're interested in that. And yeah, so I'm just going to go through the whole process of how do you pull those design elements and what they want into a template. Another piece of the design gets to the logistical questions, visual templates, and the who, what, whens. When are we going to do what? And this is where you get more people involved, because I'm sure you're not going to do everything. It takes a team to put together a meeting. So it might be something like, okay, we need someone to take care of lunch. We need someone to make sure that we're communicating to everyone who's in the meeting, figuring out who's going to do what task and by when. And so those are some examples of how ideas from sticky notes can be turned into templates that can be drawn out on the wall. Another piece that I have here, and I haven't used this in person yet, though I might someday. This is called a Wally, but it's something that fits really great in my screen if I don't have all this stuff behind me, that I can also be collecting online if I don't have a document camera. So we'll even get deeper into that as well. And again, if you have any more questions coming up before you have to drop off, please put them in the chat. I'll make sure that they're included in the recording. And let me just continue with the rest of the design and the deliver phase. So again, we're going to dive deeper into the delivery in the last session of the course in November. And that's going to get into what does that look like online? What does that look like in person? What might it look like hybrid? And then also managing the relationship. So how are we going to ensure that we have the communications that we need in place, and whether that's email, and then also managing that relationships through contracts and things like that. So today you received a high-level overview of this 5D process, how I apply that in discovery meetings, and then hopefully you've had an opportunity to spend some time on the dance floor, though I know not very much. I will tell you that in November it's going to be very interactive. But I'm curious, are you leaving with at least one thing that you can implement, an idea? Did you gain anything from being here? Okay, I see a yes. I would love to hear what that is. So if you could take a moment to type any key takeaways that you have in the chat. I'll stick around for about 10 more minutes or so, answering questions that you may have. And I'll answer your live questions, and then again, I'll get to those pre-submitted questions that were great. I got to dive in and think about them a little bit this morning. All right, good. I hope you can use this tool. Yeah. Yes, so I use this information, that discover, dream, design, and a little bit of the delivery piece in my statement of work, right? So I've got the purpose, I've captured the vibe, the essence of what they want. I even put out, if I do give them a preliminary agenda, I already have some sketches of what those look like, and I'll be sharing lots of examples of what my high level and illustrated agendas look like in November, and also copies of um, uh, SOWs, just some boilerplate SOWs that you could use. And that also includes, I have a very simple statement of work that I use that lines out with the roles, responsibilities, the timelines, the fees, and all of that all in one place. And it's a very simple version. My contracts are very simple. And so it's all stems from this really great piece of paper. And then sometimes that ends up getting folded. I put the client's name on the front, and that's the file until I get to work with them. So great. Excellent. So I see a lot in the chat. Tina, if you don't mind pulling, if there's any questions in there, please pulling those out for me.
Heather, there was, I'll summarize those, but to get started, people were
Yeah.
intrigued by the IPVO camera, if you want to just highlight that.
Absolutely. So before I get way in the weeds on some of these things, I want to thank all of you for attending today's session. A follow-up email with a link to the recording will be sent to you within a week. I've got a lot of other things juggling, and I have a feeling that once I answer some of these questions, it's going to take me some time to pull together some of these resources. So please know that I'm offering a session like this again in July and October if you'd like to share this with a friend. And there will be a limited number of seats in the November course to ensure that everyone gets a high-touch experience. So if you'd like to secure your spot, we'll put the link in the chat. And so now I'll go into bonus time where I'm happy to answer questions that you have. First, starting off with the IPVO. There are two IPVO cameras that I recommend. This is the IPVO VZX, and I recommend the VZR. There are a lot of less expensive IPEVO cameras. They're really made for students. This is more of a teacher, presenter, facilitator grade. And I say that because most of the features are already on the actual base of this. So I can choose zooming in or out, my exposure, I can rotate, I can put on filters, things like that, focusing, and it's all built in within the base of the camera. The difference between the VZR and the VZX is the VZX has a battery on it, and it's meant to be used so that you don't have to be plugged in. However, I don't recommend that. I don't recommend it for two reasons. One, sometimes there's a lag, so I actually am hardwired into my computer. So if I'm using Wi-Fi, so many things could go wrong, right? And so I don't recommend it. I did once use this when I was lettering on a beach in New Zealand, and I was able to go live on Facebook or something like that. And that was one time. The other bad thing about it is if you do travel with this, you have to put it in your checked, well, you can't put it in your checked baggage because it's got a battery on it. And if you take it through security, you always get stopped. So the VZR is the one that I recommend. And I've had this one for probably, it was well before the pandemic, like 3 years, and it's never gone out on me. And I do have a backup, a VZR is my backup, and I haven't had to pull that out. So great question. Any other questions, Tina?
We've had lots of wonderful comments and thanks. Some folks have watched the video before today's session and gave a shout out that they've already used it with a client. We've had some questions about the details for November. I've put those up in the chat with the dates and how to sign up. And one
Excellent.
question, which I know you'll want to address, was, will you be going this fast in November?
No. No, no. In fact, some of you already know me. You've been in my classes where my sessions where it's 2 hours long. I slow down the pace, and it's a 2 hour long class, each of the sessions in November. So the pace is much slower. We really dive in. It's going to be more high touch. It's definitely going to be more interactive. You're going to be annotating. You're going to be using third-party collaboration software. We're going to be doing a lot of drawing. You're going to see me drawing. You're going to be drawing along with me, and I will be slowing down, especially for those who where English isn't your first language, or I'm using a lot of new terminology that you may not be used to. So, absolutely. In fact, let's slow it down. I rarely give anything, any kind of uh, like mini session in a half an hour. This is the first time I've ever done it this fast. So I did pack in a lot, a lot. So thank you, Tina, for putting the dates in the chat. Anything else that's burning questions, feel free to unmute or put it in the chat.
Heather, it looks like people are enjoying that template for the intake. Some have already used it. It's a great tool and kind of a sneak peek for what's coming up in November.
Great. All right. So I'm going to get to my questions that were pre-submitted. Oops, here we have one. What does tech hosting have to do with visuals? You do both separately or always together? Ah, excellent question. So, I believe tech hosting helps the virtual environment be a place where we can all thrive. And I think that's really in line with appreciative inquiry. And for those of you who might be interested in learning tech hosting, that's something separate. It's a totally different skill set. I have a course called Tech Host Academy. Um, not only is Tina a graduate of that course, but she helped me design parts of it, and she is my number one tech hand, I would say. And so it is slightly differently, but I do use them together. And Tech Host Academy is based in appreciative inquiry. So the whole design process of how we as tech hosts help clients or groups meet online is based in appreciative inquiry as well. You'll see appreciative inquiry as a part of all of my offerings. So excellent. Thank you for putting that in the chat. And I think there's a discovery link. I'll put that in the chat as well. And then what other AI prep do I recommend prior to the class? Oh, that's excellent. So I'm guessing, Kathy, you mean what prep you can do as a participant prior to the November class. I will be sending that out for those who register. I will be sending that out a month before, and just probably some read aheads, maybe even a supply list and some pre work activities for me to get a sense of where you are and what some of your goals are. And anything that I share out, templates, worksheets, you are welcome to customize and use that for your clients. Or if you don't have time to customize it, you can just use any PDF that I send to you. You can use that in your work as well. So everything that I'm offering, you can reuse. So excellent materials and okay. Thank you for putting that together. All right. So the first question, pre-submitted question that I had was about time zones. While the times of the mini sessions and the November class have already been set, and recordings will be made available to registered participants and also in November, both for the ones that are coming up in November, I will hold office hours to accommodate other time zones as well. And those office hours are going to be available to anyone who couldn't come to the live session, they've watched the recording, or even those who could attend the live session and they just want to dive a little bit deeper and want a little bit of extra support. I'll be holding office hours in November, and we will determine what times those are based on those who are registered. So I'll probably put together like a doodle poll or something like that and determine the best times. I will also offer additional one-to-one if you have a big project coming up or you really want to customize something and you need my help. I'll be offering discounted one-to-one sessions as well. All right. And then what is the most effective way to introduce visuals to accommodate diverse learning styles? And I love this question because it's already built in. Visuals help with diverse learning styles. But first, you need to determine the learning preferences of the group and align any accommodations that they have and exercises that will ensure that purpose or the desired outcome of the meeting is met, right? So, really understanding what that purpose is. That's why the discovery meeting is so important. That's why really listening and asking those inquiry questions to pull out of them what they need. And you can ask that in the meeting. It's so important to design for the margins, right? So, learning, finding out if there's diversity in learning styles, in thinking styles. Is this a very auditory group? Is it a very visual group? Is it a kinesthetic group? All of those things build into the learning experience. And so, in November, you're going to experience all of those things in that process, both on the balcony and the dance floor. And we're going to discuss this mainly in the design session. All right, again, keep putting things in the chat or feel free to unmute. I have just a few more questions that were asked, about 5 more. Um, let's see. What is the simplest way to bring more visuals into my work? So, if you're facilitating and harvesting information using templates to support a conversation, this can be really effective. So, it helps if everyone can see what's being said so that it can serve as a record for the group. So, if you're pushing information, there's a wonderful tool called Drawify, and I'm going to put that in the chat. This is a group that I was a part of a few years ago. I helped develop their logo and help them develop some of the ways that they're sharing information. And what this is it's a tool where there are all of these artists, visual practitioners that have come up with almost like a customized, hand drawn art library, and you can pull from these onto it's almost like you've got a drawing board to help you tell your stories. And there's many other resources and tools like this I'm going to share during the class. I'm not going to demonstrate how to do Drawify. They have people that can do that for you, but um, it's a wonderful tool. Tina, do you mind re-putting that link in the chat with the HTTP in it so it's live? All right. Great question about what content best lends itself to visuals. And if you're on the call now and you ask that question, I might need you to clarify that a little bit because I know visual practitioners all over the world um, working in all sectors of society. I don't know of any type of content that can't be enhanced by the use of visuals. So if you ask that question, I'd love to hear more about what it is you're thinking. And then what kind of visuals are most engaging or useful for audiences? Now, here's where we've got to go back to that purpose. That's where this template is so important, and knowing the audience. So if this is a conference, then graphic recording is a very effective way for participants to take in the information and can be used to represent what happened in the room and can be used for marketing and promotion. So just the flat out someone drawing while someone's talking. That's a very much a push environment. Now, if we're serving mission driven agencies that are tasked to tackle hard problems, then visual facilitation is critical to help experts what I call think of all the things. So, simulate scenarios, make decisions based on systems thinking. I mean, when it gets really complicated, you need a visual practitioner that really understands process to be able to help with that. And if it's team building, trust building, equity building, if those are important in the session, then visuals help level the playing field by helping groups gain understanding quickly and by using these universal or even specific industry, specific visuals to define and communicate more effectively. So so I'm not sure if I answer that question, what kind of visuals are most engaging. Sometimes it's illustrative, sometimes it's process, it's showing steps. Sometimes it can be really messy. They're not all beautiful. right? And then someone asked, I love this, what tools and tips will help me draw or create my own visuals quickly and clearly without much professional training? Now, if you look behind me here, you're going to see words, circles, and lines. Not a hard thing to do if you've got a ruler, you've got some markers, and maybe you have some tools like that are going to help you draw some circles, right? Very easy. Um, so if you want to do drawing at a self-taught pace, I recommend Bacablo books. And I've got them right here. I've got a whole pile of books I'm going to share. So Bacablo is a German-based company that has very, very simple drawings. And they give you um, instances of when and where you would draw things. Now, these are a little bit more complicated. At the beginning of the book, they start out very simply with containers and shapes. They also offer in person and online training. And I have taught a class to Bacablo trainers in Cologne, Germany, and I've partnered with Bacablo trainers to deliver workshops that I have to say, if I would have taken their trainings early on in my work as a visual practitioner, they just weren't developed and available at that time, I truly believe my career trajectory would have been much different. And so we'll put a link to the books and the training in the chat. There's another book that they have. Oops, here we go. It's called Bacablo Emotions. So, if this kind of drawing seems a little bit sterile, what I love about it is they get into some very simple ways to draw emotions as well. And then if you are in the US and you're looking for an in-person Bacablo training, I highly recommend Jill Greenbaum. She is based out of New York and she offers in-person and online Bacablo training. And she and I have taught together several times. So, yeah. So then I was also asked if I offer one-to-one coaching because I've used visuals in coaching, uh, presentations, facilitation, and training as well. Yes, I offer one-to-one coaching using 3 different modalities. I am a certified Shift It visual coach, which means we have 17, actually more than 17 different templates that we use to take you through a major life shifting process. This can be with career, personal, whatever you want. I also have my own IP, which is Art Career Theorem, and that's for artists who are wanting to live their artist life. So, this is specifically for artists, very much based on values based decision making and visioning. And then I have appreciative productivity coaching, where we use appreciative inquiry and productivity processes like the AI template, because I use this template not just for discovery meetings, but I use it for a lot of visioning and planning as well for in my one-to-one coaching. And I also teach flow techniques. So the work of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, I teach his method. I've actually created exercises to help you get into the flow state so you can be really productive, and then also how to integrate what you've learned. And so I have a whole integration, lots of integration tools on helping people take what they've learned, and I'll even show those. I'll share those in November so that you have them, so that you can help those that if you are a trainer, you can help those take what they've learned so they can move on with that. All right, another question. What is the name of the flow state person, please? Okay, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And I don't know, Tina, if you could, you may not know how to spell it, but if you could do a quick Google search, you could paste that into the chat. Excellent. And then how AI and visuals can bring the unknown, this sensitive. This has to be the most important thing we do as appreciative inquiry facilitators, is to create a space where people can discover their inner strengths and share them in a way that we can connect with one another. So while I take a very practical approach, and I apologize, today was like super fast, when I'm working, I'm also considering human-centered design and using appreciative inquiry tools to help harvest the life-giving force that makes each one of us unique and connects us to one another so that we can make change at the speed of imagination. Now, I love that term, this making change at the speed of imagination. And there's a book, an appreciative inquiry book with the same name. It was written by 3 authors, Jane Magruder Watkins, Bernard Moore, and Ralph Kelly. You'll see that I've really taken a lot of notes around this book. So it's called Change at the Speed of Imagination. And I love this book because it takes traditional organizational development and puts it on its head. It's not focused on problems, it's focused on possibilities. And I love this book so much because read a lot of the case studies and said, how would I have visualized this meeting to make it go? Right? So, um, really wonderful case studies, ways to form the kinds of questions. And if you're interested in learning more questions, I have a few more books here. The basic book that I think a lot of folks you probably have already read or listened to, there's an audiobook of this, is Appreciative Inquiry, A Positive Revolution in Change. I'll also make sure that this all goes in the follow-up email to you, and then three other books that are solely for creating those universally positive questions. The Encyclopedia of Positive Questions. This is based in Appreciative Inquiry. David Cooper Ryder was one of the authors. Appreciative Sharing of Knowledge. This is leveraging knowledge management for strategic change, professor out of Washington, D.C., and then appreciative team building. And this is specifically for finding out those getting clarity and sharing goals, and also really helpful for HR directors that need to ask questions during maybe performance reviews. So, yeah. So, I want to talk a little bit more about how appreciative inquiry and specifically visuals can help in a meeting. So I want you to imagine yourself sitting either in a Zoom room or in an in person conference room having a meeting, and the discussions throughout the session. Maybe they're breakthrough in whatever that means to you. They're helpful, they're meaningful, they're deep. People were really connecting, and you were really getting somewhere. It might be a feeling of like this extraordinary feeling of, wow, we actually got somewhere. But once you leave that room, if there's no visual record, what happens to all of that wonderful information shared? It's as if it just hangs in the air and either dissipates if you're in a Zoom room, or if you're in person, it just falls to the floor and the cleaning crew comes and vacuums it up at the end of the day. But when you have a visual practitioner or someone who's visually capturing that in the room, you've got a record. You can look around the room, do a gallery walk, see what was said, use that outside of the room to help bring other people up to speed or to have conversations about it. And then it can live in our hearts and our minds, and the visuals can serve as an important reminder of our time together, what we dreamed, what we shared, and what we accomplished. So, thank you so much, Tina, for putting that book in the chat. You might also want to search around online to find a price that works for you. I've seen it on Amazon for over $50. I've bought it on eBay for less than 10. So definitely search around, and I've had several copies of this book, and I've also given it to people because I think it's one of the best books really written in terms of really getting down to how to make appreciative inquiry something that we can go from that dream state to that desired state very, very quickly. So great. All right. So, any other questions before we sign off? I want to thank those of you who've stayed through the entire thing. I know that we were only scheduled for a half an hour. Great. And if you have any additional questions, you still have access to the survey. You can always email me if you have questions. Would love to study with you deeper in November. And the feeling of that is going to be, I want to hear your case studies. I want to hear the projects that you're working on, and to help fill in any gaps that you have, or even take a new approach to adding visuals and appreciative inquiry to your work. So thank you so much, everyone. Loved having you here, and we'll hopefully see you in November, but you will get a follow-up email from me within the week. All right, everyone. Bye-bye.